That's a very negative outlook on life. It's like saying the minute you're born, you start to die.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is. Yeah, indeed. But yeah, that's true. Really, you have to look at the cup as half full. We have 6.5 days left of Hanukkah, the Chaparine, the treasures of Hanukkah. Okay, so I'm going to go back a couple of lines, even though we got on to Amud Aleph yesterday, but we're in the middle of a conversation. So we'll go back to Yud Zayin Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. And we've been discussing the Yomim Tovim that were listed in the Megillas Taanis, and we learned that there are some days that you just not allowed to fast, but there are some days that are even a bigger Yom Tov, and on those days, you're not even allowed to give a hesped. And the Megillas Taanis started off by telling us that the first 8 days you cannot fast and you cannot make a hesped because of the simcha of the establishment winning the debate about the carbon tamid, that it's only a communal carbon, and then overlapping with that from day 8, which day 8 overlaps until the end of Pesach. There was another Yom Tov to celebrate the fact that we were able to triumph over the Tzedukim and the Baitusim, that Shavuos isn't necessarily on a Sunday, B'machar Shabbos doesn't necessarily mean the day after Shabbos. And the Gemara is analyzing why it was necessary to answer all these days from Hesped V'Taanis, if anyway they are not able to be days where you could fast because of other reasons. Now, before we go weiter, we just need to remember an important machlokes that we had in the Mishnah about the days before the Megillas Taanis and about the days after the Megillas Taanis. So we had a machlokes between Yosy and the Tanakama, and I'm just going to bring it up inside. And the Mishnah says as follows: Rabbi Yosy Omer, no, not over here, a little bit earlier. The Tanakama says, "Lefon of Aser, la'achar of Mutter." If it's a day that's a serious Yom Tov, where you can't even make a hesped, the day before is Aser, but the day after is Mutter. Rabbi Yosy was machmer, and he said the day before and the day after is Aser. That's the halacha by a day that you're not even allowed to have a hesped. But on a day that's not such a big Yom Tov, it's only a day that you're not allowed to fast, then according to the Tanakama, both Lefanim and La'achar are mutter. And according to Yosy, Lefanim is also La'achar is mutter. But I want to focus now on the days of the higher level of Yom Tov, where you're not even allowed to make a hesped. And on those days, according to the Tanakama, Lefanim is also La'achar is mutter. And according to Yosy, Lefanim and La'achar are also. That's something that we need to be aware of, because that's going to be relevant. The fact that it's Rabbi Yosy who holds that la'achrav is aser, but the Tanakama holds la'achrav is going to be mutter. So let's keep that in mind when we learn this Gemara. So we're back to the Gemara Shmuel. We're 3 lines from the bottom and Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis. I'm going back a little bit. Omar Mar, mitman yebei at soif mayada, from the 8th day of Nisan until the end of Pesach, itoyshav chaga d'shvuaya. That's when we were able to settle what day Shavuos is on. And because of that, they made a halacha, a Yom Tov, the Loila Mitzvah. You're not allowed to even make a hesped, which is the higher level of Yom Tov. The Gemara, Lama li at soif moed. Why did they need to extend this Yom Tov until the end of Pesach? Lema ad hamoed. All they need to do is make the Yom Tov go until Pesach. Umoyed gufei Yom Tov. The Yom Tov of Pesach is a Yom Tov minei ubei, independent of any special halacha of Megillas Taanis. The Aser, and therefore anyway it would be Aser the Taanis, and it would be Aser behesped. So Omar Papa said the reason why they felt the need to make the takana on the days of Pesach as well is Kida Omar Rav, like Rav said. And what did Rav say? The reason why they made this gzeira and they overlap and they created an extra layer of Isser Taanis, an extra layer of Isser Hesped on the days of Pesach, which are anyway Asher B'Taanis and anyway Asher B'Hesped, is Ela L'Eser L'Yom Shalafanav. So we said earlier that the reason why they Asered Rosh Chodesh through day 8 for the first Yom Tov, was because they asked Rosh Chodesh because they wanted the day before Rosh Chodesh to be Aser the Hesped of Taanis as well. So just like Rab said earlier, we can adapt his svara and use it here as well to explain why they extended the Yom Tov through Pesach. They wanted to, if it was just Pesach itself, the day after Pesach is not Aser, Pachim. But if we made this special Yom Tov of Megillas Taanis, then even the day after would be Aser to fast, Aser to have a husband, and that's what they were trying to do. But we need to think about this for a second, because we had a machlokes in the Mishnah as to what is the status of the day after the Yom Tov. And according to the Tanakama, it's mutter. It's only according to Rabbi Yosy, where the day after the Yom Tov, it's also going to be Aser. So, Frank the Gemara, if you're telling me that the only reason why they made the Megillas Taanis, Yom Tov, good morning, the only reason why they made this Yom Tov is only because they wanted to Aser the day after Pesach, well, that'll only be consistent with Rabbi Yosy. Kaman to Rabbi Yosy. That would only be consistent with Rabbi Yosy. The Amar Bein Lefan the Bein La'achar Aser. But how are you going to have shot in the Megillas Taanis according to the Rabbanon? Zok the Gemara, Zok Rashi, Kaman to Rabbi Yosy, Tamas Nisan the Amar Af La'achar. It's only going to fit in according to Rabbi Yosy, who says that the day after the Yom Tovim are designated are also Aser the Taanis. Good morning. Vitmiya, the Shavkas Rabbanon, are we just ignoring the Shita of the Rabbanon? According to the Rabbanon, we also need an explanation as to why they extended the Yom Tov to Pesach as well. Now, we're going to take it a step further. If you're going to say that this whole Megillas Taanis is only consistent with Rabbi Yosy, well, then we're going to have another problem. So before we go by to Rashi, let's go by to the Gemara. That we're doing this, we're explaining this according to Rabbi Yosy, that even the day after the designated day is also going to be also B'Taanis. On day 29 of Adar, which is Erev Rosh Chodesh Adar, where Rav said earlier, the reason why they asked Rosh Chodesh Adar, even though Rosh Chodesh itself is a Yom Tov, is because they wanted to extend the Isser to the Erev Rosh Chodesh Adar to 29, it's Nisan. The reason why they included Rosh Chodesh Nisan in the first set of Yom Tovim is because they wanted to also Aser the day before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is Chavtes Adar. They also wanted to include that in the Isser. Rosh Chodesh wouldn't have done that. Right, Gemara, if that's the case, there's no need to extend the Isser to Rosh Chodesh Nisan so that we can cover Erev Rosh Chodesh Nisan. You know why? In my area, to have a Yoima, the Mekama Yoima, the Metukam Tamida, why is it that you answered earlier that the reason why they extended the Isser, the Yom Tov of Megillas Taanis to Rosh Chodesh Nisan is so that we will also Aser the Hesped of Taanis, Erev Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which is Chavtes Adar. There's a different reason, according to Rabbi Yosy, why Chavtes Adar would be Aser to fast. The day 29, the 29th day of Adar, by coincidence, happens to be the day after the 28th day of Adar. And the 28th day of Adar is a Yom Tov. It's another Yom Tov listed in Megillas Taanis. The Tanya, on day 28 of Adar, Asas Besurta Taftal Yudoi, a great news came to the Eden, that they won't have to give up the Torah, because there was a Gzer, they'll have to give up the Torah. So, Frank the Gemara, according to Rabbi Yosy, that the day after one of these Yom Tovim mentioned in the Megillas Taanis, you're not allowed to fast. Well, then day 29, you can't fast anyway, because day 28 is one of the Yom Tovim. So our kasha goes back to its place. Why in the Yom Tov of the first week of Nisan did they include Rosh Chodesh? Rosh Chodesh anyways also behesped of Taanis. So they could have started their Yom Tov from the second day of Nisan. You wanted to say the reason why they made it on the first day of Nisan as well is to Asher the day before, which is Chavtes Adar. We don't need to do that to Asher Chavtes Adar, because according to Rabbi Yosy, Chavtes Adar, which is the day after Chavches Adar, is anyway a Yom Tov. So that's what our problem is. So let's go by to in Rashi. Chavtes Ba'adar. So we're on the second skinny line in Rashi. Chavtes Ba'adar Nami. The 29th day in Adar. The Katarat Tala'il. You mentioned earlier, according to Rav, that the Hachi Nakat Reish Yachad Nisan Dani Yom Shloshim. The reason why they made Rosh Chodesh Nisan into a Yom Tov is because the Adar Hashem of Nisan Olam Chaser. the Adar that's near Nisan is always chaser michav tes yoimu. It'll only be a month of 29 days. Why? So why do they ask Rosh Chodesh? Because they wanted to ask her the day before Rosh Chodesh. They wanted to ask her Yom Chavtes. Right, the Gemara. If we're going with Rabbi Yosy, the belaf hachi haba also Yom Chavtes. The 29th day of Adar anyway would be also Taanis. The Havala Yom de Basar Chavches, because it happened to be the day after day 28. Shehu Yom Tov, which is a Yom Tov for a different reason. It's a separate Yom Tov because of a Gzeir that became nullified on that day. But also Yom Shalah Achav Rabbi Yosy. And like we learned in Rabbi Yosy, that the day after one of these Yom Tov, it's also Taanis. And therefore, by my Nokot Reish Yarcha Lesser Shalafan. Why did they have to extend or start earlier the Yom Tov of the first week of Nisan to Rosh Chodesh Nisan? They could have started that Yom Tov on the second day of Nisan. Okay, so now we're still stuck. We don't know why they extended the second Yom Tov to Aleph Pesach. Why didn't they stop Erev Pesach? And then Pesach anyway is going to be Osir Hespedu B'Taanis. And you can't say it's the cover for the day after Pesach, because that is only consistent with Rabbi Yosy. We need to understand that according to Rabbanan. And even according to Rabbi Yosy, if you rely on that svara, then you have a problem with Rosh Chodesh. Now let's just take a little bit of a break and let's talk about what this Yom Tov of 28th Adar is about. There was a Gzeir on Klal Yisrael that they're not allowed to learn Torah. And they shouldn't mal their children. And they should be Mechal Shabbos. They were attacking the essence of Klal Yisrael. Ma'asa Yehuda ben Shemua b'Chavera. What did Yehuda ben Shemua and his friends do? They had to take action. They had to stop this. Hochu v'natlu eitza mimatru nisa achas shekol gedoylei roimi mitzuyin etzlam. They went and took advice from Matranusa, some well-known woman, that all of the gedoylei roimi would hang out with her. And yeah, we had this Gemara before. And the question if this woman was some prestigious woman, they hung out with her for her sage advice, or if for other reasons. So Amar Lahem, she knew them intimately, let's just say. Imdu, get up, v'efkinu b'layla, and you should make a protest at night. Why at night? Rashi told us when we looked at the Gemara last time, is first of all, it's quiet at night. So therefore people hear. B is, you have to dox them. You have to go to their homes and get them at night, where they'll see you and they'll hear you. In other words, when you're making this protest, you have to make sure that it impacts them. And that's exactly what they did. They went and they made a demonstration. Rashi is tzaku, they screamed by night. And the Amr, they said, Ishamayim, for heaven's sakes. And they said to Rebbeinu Shalom, aren't we brothers? Even though you're Esav, but Lamaisa, we were brothers. If you go back a little while, we're brothers. So you, Goyim, why are you treating us differently? Or maybe they're asking Rebbeinu Shalom, why are you treating us differently? Why are we different than any other Ummah V'Loshen? What about human rights? So that created enough pressure on the rulers of Rome, and it maybe convinced them, and the Hafkanah worked, the protest works. That day that they got the news that they're allowed to practice our Yiddishkeit, that they made until Yom Tov, and that was the 28th day of Adar. Amar Abaye, and Abaye said, so now we have a difficulty. We want to know, according to Rabbi Yosy, who holds that the day after a Yom Tov is also best of Taanis. So why do we need to Asher Rosh Chodesh in order to include day 29 of Adar? Day 29 of Adar is also the fast because it's the day after day 28 of Adar. And we just illustrated what the Yom Tov was about. So Zok Abaye, I'll tell you why. If there's only 29 days in Adar, you're going to be good. Because 28th Adar is this Yom Tov, 29th Adar is the day after that Yom Tov, and I don't need the Rosh Chodesh, the Asher the day before. But what if that year there's 30 days of Adar? What are you going to do then? Then the 30th day of Adar, that's Erev Rosh Chodesh. How are you going to Asher that day? The only way you could do that is by making Rosh Chodesh Nisan into a Yom Tov. It'll cover the day before, which is day 30 of Adar. There's an interesting Rashi here, because we just learned Rashi that said that the Adar that's nearest to Nisan will always be a Chaser. It'll always be 29 days. That's the Rashi we learned just a moment ago. Rashi here says a little bit differently. So let's look at Rashi. So now Chodesh Mur means Adar in an Ibrayar, sheyesh ba shnei Adar, la echad chaser. One of the two Adarim will be chaser. The hashtag you have the Adar Sheni Malay. If Adar Sheni is Malay, if Adar Sheni is the month with 30 days, have a Yom Shloishim Lefnei Rosh Chodesh. Then the 30th day of the second Adar will be before Rosh Chodesh. So that's one pshat he says. Or Inami. So the first pshat he says that it's always that way. The second Adar will be 30 days, which is not what he said before. But in the Rashi second pshat he says, Inami Davur Adar. We're not speaking about an Ibayur. We're speaking about a year. Nobody came and saw the moon. So because of that, they had to add a day to the month. And now we need to wait to Asher Lamed. The way Asher Lamed is by making the Yom Tov and Rosh Chodesh Nisan. It'll include the day before, which is Lamed. You see, Vamir, also a very interesting thing. We're actually making an assumption that Chav Ches Adar, that Yom Tov of Chav Ches Adar, you celebrate an Adar Sheni, not an Adar Rishon, right? So they bring rise from this Gemara, the same thing with a yard side. If somebody has a yard side on a regular Adar, and then it comes to Ibayar, which of the two Adars does he keep the yard side? Armin is Adar Sheni because of that. In my case, my father died on the Ibayar, on Adar Rishon. By me, it's not a shayla, but most people who lost somebody in an Ibayar, in a Shana Pshuta, so on the Ibayar, I believe most people keep the second Adar. But you have to do Kiddush both weeks. Both weeks. I for sure don't keep both because my father died in an Adar Rishon. But if someone who died in a regular Adar and there's two Adarim, and this is Ibayar, I think the main thing is to keep Adar Sheni. But you got to give a Kiddush both months.
You only have the Kiddush once every 4 years.
I very rarely give a Kiddush. Well, not the day of the yard side, I rarely give a Kiddush because it doesn't fall on Shabbos very often. But Kiddush I can give every year. I mean, only in Tibir. No, because on a regular year, it's the Adar Rishon. Adar Rishon and Adar Sheni are the same in a regular year. Okay, Zok Gemara Vayter. Abashi Omar, the 3 out of 4 times it falls on Taanis system. Right? Because what's Adar Rishon, one's Adar Sheni? Oh, wow. Listen, I remember in our class, there were two boys who had a bar mitzvah neder. My cousin Yosy Yoman was Gimel Adar, was Vav, he was Vav Adar Aleph, and Shuvi was Gimel Adar Beis. They were born in Ibayar, but it was a Shana Pshuta that the bar mitzvahs was. So Shuvi's bar mitzvah was a week earlier. I remember Yosy Yoman was jealous. Okay. That's right. Rabbi Yaakov was after this same year. My father was after. He was after 2 weeks after my father. And Moshe was after 4 weeks after my father. Yeah. He's at the base. He's using him at the base. Rabashi says, Afilu tema l'chodesh chaser. Even if it's a chodesh chaser, it's not a problem because kol shala acharav. So let's say it's a chodesh chaser. So then you're going to ask, if it's a chodesh chaser, why do we need to extend the Yom Tov to Rosh Chodesh Nisan to include day 29. Day 29 anyway is usher because of day 28. So the Gemara tells us a chiddush kol shala achrav. The day after the Yom Tov, the Taanis usher behesped mutter. Even when Rabbi Yosy said that the day after the Yom Tov, you also have the Isurim of the Yom Tov. The Isurim don't say you can't make a hesped. It's not so severe. The Isurim just say you can't fast. So therefore, if it was only for day 28, then day 29 would have been mutter behesped, but also b'taanis. They wanted to make it also behesped as well. This day, day 29, since it's the day after the Yom Tov of Chavches, it's the day before the Yom Tov of Rosh Chodesh. Therefore, asuch Yom Tov atzmai va'afilu behesped nami Yosy. So the reason why they needed to make both days Yom Tov side of first day of Nisan and Sayud Ches, they wanted your test not only to be usher, the Taanis, but also usher behesed. Okay, let's go back to Amar Mar. Mitman Yabei, Be'ad Soif Moyada, from the 8th day until, so this teretz here that we just said will work even according to the Rabbanah. It'll work even according to the Rabbanah because since we wanted it sandwiched in between in order to, let me just think, will it work according to the Rabbanah? No, it will still not work according to the Rabbanah. It will still not work according to the Rabbanah because according to the Rabbanah, the day after wouldn't be usher anyway. So we still don't have a shot according to the Rabbanah, but let's see what comes out in the Gemara later. I think we'll have a shot soon. Zok Amamar, Mitmanya Bay, Vatsoit Mayada, from the 8th day of Nisan until the end of Pesach, Itoishav Chaga de Shvuaya, that was when they were able to come to a resolution on the Yom Tov of Shavuos. Because of that, you don't do Hespedim for that time. Why did they have to start this on the 8th day? Because we already know that the first Yom Tov also included the 8th. So why do they need to include the 8th day of Nisan in both the first week Yom Tov and the second week Yom Tov? It's also the Hesbud of the Taanis because of the first Yom Tov. So Frank the Gemara, let's say it's on the 9th day, and the 8th day anyway is Aser. They took him Beit Tamida. That was the last day of the first Yom Tov where they established that the carbon tamid is a carbon seed. Zok the Gemara, a teretz. Kiven the ilu mikla milsa uvatline lishiva. What happens if something occurs and they decide to be mevatel that first Yom Tov? And Rashi says, what might happen? So I want to skip to Rashi towards the bottom of the skinny lines, and there's a long dibra maskul. The ikla milsa uvatline lishiva taman yugufay aser. Even if the first Yom Tov gets eliminated, we want the 8th day to remain usher, so therefore we include it in the second Yom Tov as well. If something occurs, for instance, let's say there was some severe gzera, and for some reason we had to violate, we had to waive temporarily this Yom Tov, the Yom Tov of the first week, and they were mevatlit lis anois bekulan, shein levatel lechatayim. Once they create a taanis in any one of those 8 days, they're going to suspend that Yom Tov completely. So what if something like that occurs? That's why they also included day 8 in the second takana, so that even if something happens that they're mevatel, the first week, the 8th day will still be a day where you're not allowed to fast. So that will be back in the Gemara. The mikla milso v'tinu l'shiva tamanya gufay aser. The 8th day will still be aser. It'll be the first day of the second Yom Tov of Nisan, the Tosav Beichag Shuaya, where they established what is the day of Shavuos. Zok to Gemara, Hashta the Ashes Lahachi. Now that we have this svara, now the brisa will fit in perfectly according to the Rabbanim as well. Esther B'Tisha Nami, the 29th day of the month of Adar, Kivan the Ilam Mikla Milsa. Just in case something happens on the 28th day of Adar and for some reason you make a taanis there, then that'll automatically say that the 29th day is no longer aser to fast. So therefore, they needed to find a way to aser taanis on the 29th day, aser v'tisha gufay aser, tavi yoima the mekame yoima the tukam to me. So that's why they had to extend the first Yom Tov all the way back to Rosh Chodesh, so that no matter what happens, the 29th day of Adar will always remain Asher to fast. Okay? Zogt Rashi. No, we'll go back. So let me just think. According to the Rabbanon, who hold that you never have to fast the day after, right? We had a question. Why is it that on the 8th day, why is it that the second Yom Tov has to go all the way to the end of Pesach? So the only answer is for the day after. So at the end of the day, we do not have a teretz. This brisa seems to only fit in with Rabbi Yosy. Because according to the Rabbanan, we really don't have a reason why they would have extended the second Yom Tov to cover all of Pesach. Yeah, so it doesn't seem like we have a teretz. Let me see if I think I saw somewhere who says we might have attached to the Rabban, but I guess not. Okay, Zok the Gemara weiter. Itmar Rab Chia bar Asi, Amar Rav, Halacha Krab Yosi. We pass on like Rab Yosi, which means that the day before and after are usher on a day where you're not allowed to have a hesped, and a day where you're not allowed to have a taanis, just the day before is usher, but not the day after. Shmuel Amar Halacha Krab Meir, and Shmuel said Halacha is like Rab Meir. Now, Reb Meir was the one who said that the day before is usher, but the day after is not usher, even if it's a serious Yom Tov where there's no hesped. Frank the Gemara, Umi Amar Shmuel Hachi, that Shmuel Pasan like Reb Meir, because you think Reb Meir is the Mekel. But Tanya, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, even a bigger kula. He's a third shita that we're now introducing. So until now we had a two-way machlokes. According to Reb Yosy, the serious Yom Tovim, where you weren't even allowed to make a hesped, it's usher the day before and the day after. And according to Reb Meir, it's only usher the day before and not the day after. And now it comes along, Reb Shimon Gamliel and says, if you look at the nusach of the Bryce, it says these are days, the amish behind, the misbet behind. The behind is a miyat. Why did it mention behind twice? Only the days of the Yom Tov themselves are going to be usher, but lefneim ula acherein mutarim. But sai before and sai after, there's no restriction at all. So he's even more mekel than Reb Meir. Well, Amar Shmuel halacha Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, and Shmuel said that halacha Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. So how could you quote Shmuel as saying halacha Reb Meir, where you still have to keep the restrictions the day before? Here Shmuel says like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel that there's no restrictions before or after. Zok the Gemara, I'll tell you the answer. Before Shmuel became aware that there's even a shita of Reb Shimon ben Gamliel who's even more mekel than Reb Meir, even the lek a ton of the mekel Reb Meir, since he couldn't find any Tana who's mekel more than Reb Meir, Amar Allah Reb Meir, he passed like the most kula de kashita. But once he heard that there's even a more kula de kashita, even the Shamil Reb Shimon the mekel tvei, Amar Allah Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. So why would he look b'dafka to be mekel? So Rashi tells us, if we look 4 lines from the bottom towards the end of the line, halacha Reb Shimon Gamliel, this whole Megillah's Taanis, it's all midrabanan. Therefore, since it's only midrabanan, we're going to go according to the most cool Kashita. So he first passed like Reb Meir, because at that point that was the most cool Kashita he was aware of. But once he became aware of someone who was even more mekel, he went for that. Yes, they were. Yeah. V'chein Amar Bali, and Bali Rashi was the name of a chacham. He said the same thing. Amar Reb Chia bar Abba, Amar Reb Yochanan, halacha Reb Yosy, which is a chumrah. Amar Reb Chia Bali Asbrach. Let me explain something to you. He Amar Reb Yochanan, halacha Reb Yosy. That Reb Yochanan said that halacha Reb Yosy, that's adaloy lis ano. That's only that you can't fast before them. Zok Rashi, very important. He Amar Rabbi Yochanan halacha adaloy le'isano. The Yom HaKshuva and Megillah's Taanis, there's 2 different things that Rabbi Yossi is arguing with the Chum about. There's the days where the Chum said are big Yom Tovim, where you're not allowed to say hesped even, and then there's the lesser Yom Tovim where you're just not allowed to fast. And on those lesser Yom Tovim, where you're not allowed to fast, there Rabbi Yossi says that you can't fast the day before, but you may fast the day after. The only place where he asks the day before and the day after are only the major Yom Tovim that you can't even make a hesped. So Zok Rabbi Yochanan, the halacha when he passed like Rabbi Yossi is only by the days, by the lesser Yom Tovim. The Yom HaKshuv Megillah's Taanis the loyalists have no l'fneim asurim ul'achim mutarim Rabbi Yossi. That's where he passed like Rabbi Yossi, the loy Reb Meir, Domer af l'fnei mutar. Aval adaloy lemisbet, but about Rabbi Yossi's opinion on this more serious days where you can't even make a hesped, there ain't a halacha Reb Yossi, then we don't pass like Reb Yossi. The Amar lefanav ul'achav aser, el Reb Meir, the Amar lefanav aser ul'achav mutar. So what Reb Yochanan is saying is, say the days that you cannot fast, and say the days that you cannot make a hesped, the halacha is the same. The day before will be aser, but the day before will be mutar. So that's how Rabbi Yochanan wanted to qualify the. That's how Bali wanted to qualify Rabbi Yochanan's pasuk like Rabbi Yossi is only on the days of the isurim to fast. At the loyalist hano. Frank tomorrow, me Amar Rabbi Yochanan hachi. Did Rabbi Yochanan actually say that? But Amar Rabbi Yochanan halacha is mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan has a general rule that halacha is mishnah, and we learned a mishnah that will indicate that it's aser the day before and the day after. Why? It's not be learned. Even though we say like Abi Mikra Megillah, that you could be Makdim Yom Aknisa, there's reasons why you could lane earlier, but you could never lane after Yom Tesvav. Nevertheless, Mutarin Behesped Taanis. The days that you lane before will be Mutar Behesped Taanis. So what does Rashi say? B'nei Tesvav, the people who are Mukaf and Chayma, who will normally lane on day Tesvav. Now we have to go into the Bach because the Bach adds a lot of information into Rashi. So B'nei Tesvav, I'm in base in the Bach. The Krachin, those are the Krachin Mukaf and Chayma. U'b'nei Yudalad, and the B'nei Yudalad of Kfarim and the Yorais, Shakar Mikra Megillah Kadmis Man. So whether your designated day was day 15 or whether your designated day was day 14, what if you ended up landing the Megillah earlier? Megillah Nikris, B'yud Aleph, B'yud Beis, B'yud Gimel, B'yud Dal, B'tasov, L'ay Pachas V'lo Yoser, Krachan HaMakapin Chaimim HaMesh Yeshua Benon, Karin B'tasvav, Kfarim B'yoros Kedai Lois, Karin B'yud Dalad, Elashak Kfarim Makdim and L'yom Achnisa. So if you were Makdim L'yom Achnisa, now we can go back to Rashi, the third line from the top. Mutarin oisan yomim shekarua kodim zmana behesped ubetainis. Even though you're lending the Megillah on those days, there's no restriction for hesped and tainis on those days. So,
like in Rashi's day, he knew that we learned Megillah. Whereas in the Bach's day, he assumed we did not.
I hear it. So look about Amos. What exactly are we talking? If we're talking about people who were supposed to lay on day 15, they were Makavas Chayma, they could correlate Bar Beser, and they ended up laying in Megillah on the 14th day. Umi Shari, would it be Mutter Behesped of Taanis? Of course it wouldn't be. But Megillah's Taanis, it's explicit and clear in Megillah's Taanis that Yom Marba Aser Boy, Yom Chamisha Aser Boy are Yemei Puria, they're the days of Purim. Inun the Loyla Misped behind. You can't say a hesped on those days. And not only if you're day 15. You can't make a hesped on day 15, but if your day is day 15, you can't even do a hesped on day 14. So whether your day is day 14 or whether your day is day 15, both day 14 and day 15 are Yom Tovim for you, and you're not allowed to fast on those days, and you're not allowed to say hesped. So what is the Brayja talking about when it says if you laid on a different day, it's mutar and behesped of the Vela must be b'nei Beisar. It must be people from day 14. And they read the Megillah this year on the 13th day because they were Kfarim and they came in Yom Achnisa. So Purim Yudal fell out, let's say, on Tuesday, and they came one day before, they came on Monday. The Karla Betleisa. Strike the Gemara, how could you say that's why it's how can you say that it's mutter, the hesped of a taanis, on the 12th day, on the 12th day of the 13th day? How could you say that it's mutter, the hesped of taanis on the 13th day of Adar? Yom Niknahu. There's another Yom Tov that we didn't tell you about yet. The 13th day of Adar is Yom Niknar, and we'll see what that is soon. So how could the bride say mutter and hesped of taanis? It's also hesped of taanis on the 13th day of Adar. Oh, so maybe it's a different day. Let's say B'nei Beisar, they could call it Tracer. Maybe it's the day of the 14th. It's a Kfarim who laid it 2 days earlier. So let's say Purim was on Wednesday, and they came on Monday. So now they're on day 12. Then they also cannot do hesped of taanis. You know why? That's Yom Turainasu. That's another Yom Tov. On day 12 is a Yom Tov, and then day 13 is a Yom Tov. Day 13 is Yom Niknar, and day 12 is Yom Terainas. So when? That was a yard time. So the question is, where would it be mutter behesped of taanis? Elalav, we have to say, they must have lain the Megillah on the 11th day. When would they lay the Megillah on the 11th day? That's if Purim was on a Sunday and they're laying it back on Thursday. Vikatani, that on the 11th day, mutter behesped of taanis. It says that it's mutter behesped of taanis. So you see clearly, Shmami knows what Rashi, the Afal Gav, Shuyom Shalafnei Terainis, sorry, best of Taanis. You see that the day before Terainis, because Terainis Yom Tov is Yud Beis, and we're saying on day 11 it's Mutter best of Taanis. So you have a clear raya that's Mutter best of Taanis. So let's fear ice. Rabbi Yochanan said, Allah Mishnah. This that we just learned is the Mishnah. That clearly says that the day before the Yom Tov is mutar b'asputa b'tainis. So how could Rabbi Yochanan have paskin like Rabbi Yosy that the day before is not mutar b'asputa b'tainis when the Stam Mishnah says that the day before Yom Turainus is mutar b'asputa b'tainis? Zok Gemara, because of that we have to change pshat. Loy, it's b'nei arba asar v'kakari loy b'treisa. It's the b'nei arba asar that are lending it on day 12. So and on day 12 it's mutar b'asputa b'tainis. Ayuduk Amr Yom Turainus. You're going to ask me Yom Turainus. So how could you make a hesped and Taanis on day 12? Yom Turainus? Zok Gemara, Yom Turainus gufei betuli batluhu. They actually were mevatel the Yom Tov of Yom Turainus. Why? Because a very big tragedy happened on that day. Shmaya and Achia, his brother, they died. Rashi said, I don't know exactly who they are, but they were very, very choshev and mentioned, and they died on that day, and because of that, we were mevatel liyam. Kiyad Rab Nachman, you find in another place. We're going to soon see what it is. The Gemara is going to tell us.
What the original reason for answering the 14 is because it could, even a place where it's not Purim, is it because it's before the Purim?
Because 14 and 15 were designated as Yom Tovim for everybody. Kihad Rab Nachman Gozer Taanisa B'Tracer. Rab Nachman also, once upon a time, made a Taanis on the 12th day of Adar. Amalei Rabbanan, the Rabbanan told him, how could you make this Gezerah Yom Turainasu? Amalu, he told him back, Yom Turainus Gufei, Hutule Batlu, they were Mavatal Yom Turainus, Hodel V'nergu B'Shmaya B'Achia. So, Frank the Gemara, okay, fine, but it still should be Aser B'Hasput of a Taanis, but typically, the Avila Yom Shalafnei Nikner. Day 13 is the Yom Tov of Nikner. So day 12 should be also because of the day before Nikner. Amar Rabashi, that doesn't make sense. Hasha Igufei Batlu. It itself was a Yom Tov, Yom Turainus. And they said, nevertheless, you can fast on this day, even though today is the actual Yom Tov. So Mishum Yoib Niknar and Nekim and Nixar, if we overruled a Yom Tov of Turainus because of it, we're surely going to overrule just the residual day before the Yom Tov of Yom Niknar. I guess the Gemara didn't feel that way. So Zok the Gemara, I said, Igufei Batlu, Mishum Yoib Niknar and Nekim and Nixar. Okay, so that's how the Gemara remains. So now the Gemara wants to know what Chaim wants to know. What is this Niknar Yom Tov? Umay Turainus. Oh, okay, so the Gemara is going to offer you both. The Tanya we learned Niknar. Niknar was Echad Me'aparche Yavanim Haya. He was one of the great rulers of the Yavanim. When I say great, I mean great with a massive boulder of salt. V'chol yom v'yom hayameiniv yadai al Yehuda v'Yerushalayim. Every day he would raise his hand on Yehudi v'Yerushalayim. V'omer he would say, "A Mosai tibel b'yadi." When will Yerushalayim and Yehuda finally fall into my hands? Ve'ermosena, and I'll crush them. And when the Beis Chashmonai, the Malchus Beis Chashmonai, triumphed over them, they wanted to teach them a lesson that you don't what's it called, saber rattling. You don't speak out against Eretz Yisrael. And what they did was they cut off his big toe and his big finger because that's where he waved against them, and they also cut off his head because of the things that he said. The Talum b'Shara Yerushalayim, and they hung them in the Shara Yerushalayim. It's like a very barbaric thing to do, but they did that. For Amru, they said, "Pesh are you medaber begaiva, v'yadayim shal you manifa shal Yerushalayim." Such a horrible, chutzpahdik, brazen person, similar to what the Arabs say, from the ocean to the sea, Palestine will be free. Or Iran says we're going to wipe them off the map. That's mamish what they were saying. So they were punished in a very serious way. Tasabem Nakama, this is the Nakama that they're going to have on them. So, so that was a Yom Tov, the day they triumphed over Niknar. It's interesting because Shari Niknar, there was a nest that happened with those Shari Niknar. I'm not sure if it was the same Niknar or not.
Thousands, hundreds of years later.
Okay.
Nicanor was also a general.
Yeah. Well, this,
Alexandria.
Right, yeah, so that's what this is.
This is a different Nicanor.
This is the Nicanor that's a guy.
The victim of the boy, hundreds of
Right.
years.
Okay.
Also, the Chashmon, no,
So now the Gemara is going to answer Chaim Tzvi's question. My Taanis, who is this Taanis fellow? Amru, Kishabika is Taanis laharg est lulinus, upapus ochev bulut kaya. Taanis wanted to kill Lulinus and Papus, his brother in Lutkaya. And let's see why he wanted to kill them. It was for fake charges. So let's look at Rashi. Lulinus upapus echav. Tzadikim gemurmayu. They were tzadikim. Bilutkaya, that's Lud. The people of Lud were killed. They were mamish killed. Kiddush Hashem. Nobody could stand near them again. There are those who say, why were they killed? They found a daughter of a king that was found dead. Well, of course, they always make a blood libel. And they said that the Jews did it. Because they made a gzera that unless you identify to us who the murderers are, we're going to kill all the Jews. So these two came forward, who padu as Yisrael, and they redeemed Klal Yisrael. They accepted the responsibility for killing her, even though they didn't. And the king only killed Papus and Lulinus. So there's a whole shaila. Are you allowed to give up your life to save somebody else?
Pretty strange. It's a bigger Shiloh.
What's a bigger shaila?
Why did both of them have to do it?
I'm not sure. Maybe one should not. It's a good art. But the halacha is you're not allowed to give up your life to save somebody else. You're not allowed to give up your life to save somebody else. However, here they were part of the oilam that was going to be killed anyway. So they were in the group that would have been killed anyway. So therefore they were allowed to give up their life because they were in it anyway. That's one thing. The other interesting thing is that no, we'll skip that. Okay, Amar Lehem. So he told them, he's taunting, Taanis is taunting Lulinus and Papas. And he's telling them, if you're from this great nation, where you have this great God, well, where's your God today? Let your God come and save you from me. Just like Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah was saved from the Kibshan age from Nebuchadnezzar. Amrulai, they told him, well, it was a Goyf HaRoyos. It wasn't a Kibshan. It was Goyf HaRoyos, right? This is Taanis taunting. So Amrulai told him, they gave it right back to him. They were not afraid of him. First of all, Hanani, Mishael, Azariah, Tzadikim, Gemor. They were big tzaddikim. They were deserving of that base. We're not so much like that. A, B, Nebuchadnezzar Melech Hagen. Nebuchadnezzar was a Melech Hagen. That you got to take with a boulder of salt. It's right that should be a nace down to him. So the Mepharshim speak about what do you mean Nebuchadnezzar was a tzaddik? He wasn't a tzaddik, but there was a time when Nebuchadnezzar wanted to say Shira, and that was a schus for him.
He was a tzaddik because he was a Melech Hogan.
Melech Hagen, right? But he wasn't. He was a butcher.
Hogan means
I don't know, but he
a real king.
He was a murderer.
No, he was a real king. This Taanis was some kind of a general. He wasn't an emperor.
Okay, I hear. But I say Russia, and you, sir, Mr. Taanis, had you to. You're a nobody. You don't even deserve such a nice to happen unto you. And we were anyway mechuyev misa from the Rebbeinu Shalom. And therefore, if you're not going to kill us, Hashem has many other methods with which to kill us if that's what we deserve. He has bears, he has lions, that can kill us. So why are we given over to you? Why didn't Hashem take care of us in a different way? You know why Hashem gave you this opportunity? He's going to avenge our blood from you. So they were giving it to him good, but he didn't care. He just killed him. Amru, the Welt hat gesagt, the legend went that the Yufli means two officers came from Rome who put to us and they instantly crushed his skull with sticks. So clearly he wasn't such a good officer. They had stuff against him from Rome. So right after he killed these Eden, they killed him. So shoot, if they would have missed that one red light, they could have got there earlier.
Why is there second
Why is there a second what?
Why is it Umru? It's like, we have this story, and now they say.
No, Amr means the Veltzak.
No, well, Arco adds his puts in the sages, but it's the whole story started with Umru.
I hear. I don't know.
It's like, this part is less,
No, but the Amr there is them talking. Is Pupis and Lina talking.
No,
Amr Lazaz Misham is Chacham are telling us the end of the story. I'm sorry?
The story starts with my Taanis, Umru, right? They said. They
Oh,
told the story.
you mean
Now it's saying again,
I
Umru again.
hear.
This second piece of the story isn't as authenticated.
Or
as the
were
first.
other people saying it? I hear. I don't know. It's a good
Maybe
story.
it's just to emphasize something that's really almost supernatural.
I hear.
Like,
The first part is story, and now we have something.
Again.
Okay, let's go weiter. We only have a couple of minutes left. Ein Geisen Taanis Sibur B'Tchila B'Chamishi, Ein Geisen Taanis B'Rosh Chodesh. So the Mishnah tells us they started already. There was a shiloh if you finish it, right? Some people say you fast till just before the end of the day. Some people say you finish the Taanis. So V'Kama Hava Aschala. What's called starting? B'Acham or Sholosh. You had to already fast 3 fasts in the sequence in order to say that you continue fasting. Otherwise, you wouldn't continue fasting. Even if you only had 1 fast already, it establishes the fast, and you have to fast until then. This is the words of Reb Meir, although the Mishnah says they break the fast like on Tisha B'Av, they came out of there of Shabbos, you break the fast before the end of the day, the Chum said, no, you don't. You have to finish the fast completely. If it's on the Erev Shabbos, you still finish Taanis 100%. If it's on the Chodesh, you finish the Taanis 100%. And mission will start tomorrow from the new pair.
Yeah.